We have here today on the Moms Without Capes podcast, Rachel Martin. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So Rachel is a mom of seven and the author of two books, Mom Enough and The Brave Art of Motherhood. She's also a founding partner in Audience Industries, a company designed to train and equip entrepreneurs, as well as a speaker, a writer, and a community leader. Through her work, she encourages moms and entrepreneurs to live each day with purpose and drive. Today, Rachel will be sharing with us 8 things fearless moms do. I know I'm super curious, and I'm sure you are too. So before we dive into that, can you share with us, Rachel, a little bit more about your journey and how you got to be where you are today?
I would love to. People are always fascinated with that I made a career being online, especially when I tell them that I was started in the infancy of the whole online world. But I always trace it back to my dad. When I was growing up in the 80s, my dad got one of the most basic Texas Instrument computers. And my dad taught me to code at a young age. So computers were always this really cool thing. When I hit college, which is going to date me also, in the 90s, one of my classes, they said, you need to get an email address. And I'm like, oh my gosh, all right. So I started kind of in the Yahoo group era, the late end of the 90s and then early 2000s. And then I was in Yahoo groups when blogs became a thing. And somebody said, maybe you should start a blog, because I would write all the time. And I did. And I sometimes look back at that Rachel that started it, and I'm like, wow, if you would know where it's gone from then. So I started writing online and then started my blog and finding joy. And over the years, it's grown and it's grown, and it's led to my two books, but it's led to this amazing community of women and moms. And my heart is that we all, as moms, we don't forget our own hearts in the journey.
Absolutely. That's funny you said it, because my email address is Yahoo and I've had it since 2000. But
right. Yeah. My husband has
yes,
an MSN
we are
one.
the same generation.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. No, he has a Hotmail one still.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he just keeps it for fun because he's like, it's cool. It's like it's vintage now.
Yes. Yeah, that's funny, vintage. So yeah,
Right.
back then the coding was like, I remember like run, like RUN,
Right.
like all of like that very, very basic, like green screen.
Right. Yeah, when
Yeah.
I learned to code on that Texas Instrument computer, it was this huge book and I would spend forever. And then when I was done, a little ball would like go across the screen.
Yeah.
And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world. I'm like, look, Dad, look.
Let's dive into your newest book, which is called Mom
Right.
Enough. Can you share with us a little bit about that and what that's all about?
I would love to. So Mom Enough, it's really a collection of the letters that I've written over the last 10, 12 years that I've been writing my website, Finding Joy. And the letters started after one mom said to me, I really love what you're saying, but I feel like I'm not a good mom. I feel like I'm failing. And then I thought, well, if she feels like she's failing, and I certainly felt like I'm failing as well, I'm going to write her back. So I wrote this letter back to her. And it was in that infancy day of Blogspot when there was a lot of anonymous, like you could comment anonymously. So there was no way for me to reply. And I just thought, you know what? If she feels that way and I feel that way, I'm just going to publish it. And it was the first letter that really went viral. And it reminded me that all of us moms, we have these moments where we can feel alone and we just need encouragement. So the book, it's taken all these letters that I've written through my own journey from little kids to now adult kids and some that are married. And it's just put the letters, it's like a snapshot of motherhood together. And I always think it's like, I always describe it as the friend that you need when you're wondering like, am I a good mom, or I'm overwhelmed, or the kids are driving me crazy today, or there's some about when I lost my own self. So that's what it is. It's kind of the bedside companion of it's like your best friend right next to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just kind of squeeze that in there about losing your own self. Can you talk a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more about that and how you were able to find your sense of identity?
So I think that none of us plan that. None of us think like, I'm going to look in like for me, it was looking in the mirror and looking at my eyes and going, I don't really recognize myself anymore. I knew I was a good mom. Like, I'll just say that. Like, I feel like we should just actually all own that. Like, we do a pretty good job. not perfect, but felt like I was showing up. And I just didn't want my kids to get to this point where they were like, mom was a really good mom, but she was never happy. And that just the thought of it crushed me. And so I went through this kind of, I don't know, like an emotional identity crisis, but it was really more a shedding of self and rediscovery of the things that I loved. And I had to admit, I'm kind of lost right now. And because I think if you don't admit it, you don't know where to start. So I just journaled about it. I wrote about it. I wrote letters about it. I went through this process of discovering who I am right now. Maybe not again, but where I am in this journey.
How old were your kids when you decided to
They
do this?
were, so it was when I was writing my site. So they were in school. I think that's the big thing for me is once the little one for me went to school, all of a sudden, even though I worked at home and I did this business, all of a sudden the windows stayed clean and I wasn't chasing after somebody. And there was this like time that happened in my day again. And when there's time, all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? 15 years of my life, because I have a lot of kids, was spent with toddlers and keeping them alive, which that is what you do as a toddler. Like, don't touch the stove, don't go put your finger in the light socket, don't go in the street. So that pressure of always being on was gone. And it left me with time to think, well, now what? And that was really the tipping point was when they started going to school, or the
Yeah,
youngest.
yeah, yeah. It was like a new season that you were
Mm-hmm.
able to prioritize yourself a bit more. Realize that there was just that you were more than a mom.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And moms ask me all the time, I'm like, you can't compare your season. Like, if I'm sharing, like, do this and you have a newborn, it's just
Yeah.
impossible because your breaks might be 2 minutes or
Right.
you take the long way home from Starbucks.
Yes. So you also have another book aside from Mom Enough that talks more about the brave art of motherhood.
Right.
And I am thinking that what we're going to talk about today is what do fearless moms do comes
Mhm.
primarily from that book, although you did say that it does overlap into Mom Enough. But
Right.
how do you define fearless?
I think the best way to describe fearless is Eleanor Roosevelt said, do one thing every day that scares you. And I've loved that quote. But then one day my son Caleb said, Mom, you've got that quote up, but you also have another one in the house that says, do one thing every day that makes you happy. And I thought, oh, that is so interesting that often on the other side of fear or what we think we can't do is happiness. So fearless doesn't mean like reckless. Fearless means like you're really deciding, I'm going to take care of my heart. I'm going to pay attention to it. I'm going to put myself out there sometimes like, okay, I don't know the new moms at that group, but I'm just going to go up and introduce myself. It means deciding that today, I'm not going to look for tomorrow to do what I could do today. That's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the 8 things?
Well, I have it
I'm gonna
here
let you
because,
take the stage here.
all right. So,
Just let us have
I'm
it.
all right. The first one is based off another quote that I love, which is fall 7 times, stand up 8. And the presupposition in that quote is it doesn't say fall once, get up. It's like you're going to fall a lot and you're going to keep standing up. And it doesn't end on fall. And so I think that fearless moms, what I really believe is they look at the times when they stood up again. They learn from the fall. Like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. Like, certainly not. I learned that especially when the kids were young, like, not going to give them that before, after bed. I mean, after dinner. And then, but they really pay attention to when they stood up again. What did it take for me to come back to try again? So to me, that's a huge life thing is that looking at where you stand up. And then they focus on the good. I think it's really, really easy to see, well, that's not working. Your grades are bad, or I didn't get as far as I want. So to live fearlessly means that you are making an effort to look for the good. I would say that's the difference between joy and happiness is happiness is contingent upon like, so there's a surprise birthday party. Woohoo, I'm happy. Joy is this like deep posture of deciding to see the good even when life isn't perfect. So that alone, that is a fearless act. That can be a
Yeah.
really challenging thing. The other thing is they know your kids are going to make mistakes. Like no kid is perfect. And if we take it on as I'm a bad mom, I'm not good enough, all of that, we forget that they're humans. They're these
Right.
human beings that can make choices. And so we can guide them, but we don't have to, like when we give our kids the chance to be human, we allow them the opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
So
And we kind of hold them accountable as far instead of taking that whole responsibility onto ourselves and the whole blame.
it's so true. It's so true. Like even today, I have a senior in high school and I was messaging him and he goes, Mom, I can take care of it. And I realized, and it wasn't even anything bad or anything. It was just this idea that that's the letting go part is me saying, me not immediately jumping in, like when they're second grade, where I'm like, all right, what do we got to do? I'm like, you know, the dude is an adult right now, just finishing up high school. So, and that part goes with moms are real. The more real you are, the better. And people always ask, like, what does it mean to be real? But it just means like, if you were to come to my house and I apologize for the mess, or what it looks like, and it might not even be messy, I am setting up the expectation that if I was to visit your house, it has to be a certain way. And I just say, let's just, come into
Yeah.
the house, be
Yeah.
together. So I got a couple more. One of the things is they learn, and this, we just learn as moms. You don't know how, I say, you don't know how to parent a toddler till you have a toddler. You don't know how to handle middle school
Right.
moodiness till you have a middle schooler.
It's
So,
always like, I have no idea what I'm doing. You're the first time
oh,
I'm raising this is the first time I'm raising you.
right. I've told them that too. And I think, middle school age and that kind of early teen space, it just gets so quiet. And that was the part where I was like, okay, I just have to be okay with that. Like maybe, maybe I'm not the best friend anymore. um, the other thing is that you do versus just talk. Like to be fearless isn't, it's like you remove like I could, maybe tomorrow you actually decide I'm going to do this. And you make it a priority, and which leads to the seventh one is that you take care of yourself. That is huge for me, is that we as moms take care of ourselves. We don't put ourselves on the back burner. Like you have kids, our kids' appointments, like if they're going to the dentist, we take them to the dentist. If they're going to do that, we do it. And then when it comes to us, and myself included,
Right.
I'm like, I might just wait on that well check for me, because I mean I don't like it, but I make my kids go. So we take care of ourselves, but that also means investing in the things we love. And then the last thing, which is why I love what you're doing with podcasts, all that, is it takes a village. It takes all of us working together. Like if we try to mom alone, it's isolating. We think we're the only ones. We're like, how come I'm crying over this? Or how come it's great? But when we're together, it's an amazing thing because we're all united in that way.
Right.
So
And we know we're
remembering
not
that's
alone.
huge. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because it can feel isolating. It can
It
feel like
can.
you're doing it all
It
alone.
can.
So making sure that you're being intentional about connecting with other women and other moms in the similar seasons so that you know that
Right.
you're not, and those that are ahead of you and those that are, at different seasons is so
Right.
important.
Right.
Yeah.
And and I think the other thing I really learned was when, like, I never liked it when people would say just wait till they're teenagers, because they felt like it put that expectation, like, oh, what's teenagers?
And
Like,
what's
and
to
I love
come.
my teenagers. Like I think I mean, granted, it's a whole different ball game, but I love them.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
always try to tell I try to encourage like moms that are in my stage to not make it the next stage look like that. Like, no,
Yeah.
it's going to be awesome. It's a different stage, but it still can be awesome.
Rachel, how old are your kids?
So my youngest is 14 and my oldest is 27.
Okay. Okay. I'm kind of very simple. Yeah, I think I'm
Mhm.
almost similar, like the same thing. I
Nice.
have six and my oldest is 23 and my youngest is 9. So I'm like a little
Right.
bit behind you. I'm coming up behind you here.
Well, you know what's interesting about our parenting thing, and I think it's something to talk about, is when you have the oldest one, like 20 and above, there really wasn't that internet pressure that
Yeah.
happened with my youngest. Like my youngest, when he was born on Facebook, I'm like going to the hospital. Like his whole life has
Yeah.
this like
That is
digital part.
true.
But my oldest ones, I had like Family Fun magazine. And
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh,
I
so
felt pressure
did
from that.
I.
Like they'd be like, here's the checkerboard cake to make. I thought I'm going to do it. And then I forgot to do the steps. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
you're already failing. But that's
Yeah.
all I had. I didn't have the
Right. The
internet part.
Instagram reels, like where you're
Right.
comparing and you're seeing like and constantly feeling like you're not enough because you're faced with
Right.
this every day, every time you go
Right.
online. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I saw it emerge as being in the online sphere and watching creators and watching the whole thing. I saw this like culture emerge for moms where when I first published that first post, that dear mom who feels like she's failing, I shared a picture of my sink and people are like, oh my goodness, you're so brave to share your dirty sink. And I'm
Mhm.
like, don't we all have dishes at one point? Um, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just taking that behind the scenes and letting people know, like, hey, this is real, which is, I think, was your number five, right? Or your number four
Right.
about the moms are real. Like, we
Right.
don't need
Right.
to squash this part of us and it also lends to that number eight, where you feel less alone when you know that, other moms are going through very similar things.
Right. And what I love about the real part is if it's like we can encourage each other, it's the fixing of each other's crowns. Like if our friend loves yoga and we hate it, it doesn't mean we have to do it. We can just love them for it. And they can have their Instagram account where they're doing everything. And it's not a grade on us. It's just like, look what's awesome. And I think the more real we are with people, the more we cultivate like we're going to do this life journey together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. All of those things. And I was kind of mentally checking off in my mind, like, I do that. I do that.
Right, right,
Right. And it
right,
kind of gives me an idea, like, okay, you know what? I need to work on this more. Like, and I like how you distinguish the happiness from the joy and being able to like, find that joy, find that good in each day rather than because that goal of like, I want to be happy can be very
right,
overwhelming in and of itself. Like, what is that?
right.
It can be very aloof as far as like, what is that and how can you define that? But finding moments of joy in the day is definitely doable.
It is. It takes the pressure off too, because I
Mhm.
think and I also think happiness gets kind of a bad rap sometimes. We're like, oh, you shouldn't be happy. Like, don't chase that. But it's like a gift of being human. And it's just as valuable an emotion. But joy takes the pressure off of like you could have a really bad day, really hard day, but there probably is something good. And the best example I have of that is my 14-year-old has celiac disease. And when he was diagnosed, he was really tiny, like 15 months old. And I was in the hospital with him. He was there for a long time. He was in celiac crisis. They didn't know if there was more. And it was snowing. It was Minnesota. It was winter, freezing too. And I remember just feeling overwhelmed. And then I heard his vitals that like kind of bloop, bloop of going for his heart rate. And it was overwhelming because I knew that there were parents in that children's hospital where I was that would have really done anything for a normal rhythm like that. And I got a piece of paper out and I just started listing everything that was good, even in the midst of intense crisis in
Yeah.
my family. And that changed, it shifted my perspective.
Yeah, yeah. We need those perspective shifts quite
We
often.
do. We do.
Quite
We do.
often.
Starbucks helps. Starbucks helps.
Yes.
I always say get to know your baristas.
Yeah. So Rachel, do you have any final advice or any final words of wisdom?
Well, that you are mom enough. That coming up with the title for the book was huge to me, and one of the most viral things I've written was called "Why Being a Mom Is Enough," and it's really like you're a mom enough when you don't know what to do, and when you do know what to do, because at bottom line, your kids just need you.
Yeah, yeah, great. That's awesome. That's awesome. What do you do for fun?
I run, which I know some people are like, "What? That's not fun," but
Yeah,
I
that's
do love
fun.
to run. Yeah, and I also play piano. I've played piano since I was 5. So super grateful. My parents, every time I say this, are like, woohoo, the money we invested was good. But I'm super grateful for the fact that my dad would sit next to me sometimes and make sure I practiced, because piano is like, it's the voice to my soul.
Yeah, yeah. I actually started taking piano lessons last year, and I
Good
took it
for you.
just to be able to like to know some songs. I learned some songs, and then I stopped for the summer. But I'm
Right,
like, I need to get back into practicing it because I really enjoyed it. I found that at the end of the day, it was just so relaxing to sit and just tap out
right.
to like some
It
notes.
is. There's something about it for me that allows me to think. And when
Oh,
I write to music. And it's like it almost shuts out the outside world and I can just focus inward at that moment.
yeah. Do you run marathons?
I haven't done a half marathon, but I
Okay.
haven't done that. I would like to. It's on my list. Like,
Yeah,
because
it's
I
on my
actually
bucket list
know,
too.
yeah, because I'm like, there's gonna come a day when I don't know if I'm gonna be able to. And I feel like the timeline getting shorter. So I'm like, get out and do it. Get out and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've done the half marathons and I'm like I had it on my bucket list for a long time, the marathon, but as I get older, I'm like, I don't know if that's really gonna stay on my bucket
All right. Well, maybe you and I should both encourage each other to do
list.
it.
What do you have a book that you would recommend?
I have the book that changed my perspective. It was written in the 90s. It's called One Year Off by David Cohen, I believe. And it's about a family pre-internet world that it's an autobiography. They sold everything, put it all in storage in San Francisco, and traveled the world. And I remember reading it thinking, I want that freedom. I like the idea that they did something out of the norm, out of like follow these boxes, do all that was enough. And so that's my, in my 5 recommended books, that's the number
I
one, I say.
I think I would love that. I follow influencers like the hashtag van life.
Yes,
I think that is amazing. I think it's
it's
amazing. I'm like,
amazing.
oh my gosh, to be able to just do that. Like it does
Right.
seem freeing and it seems like you get to see the world. Like they always make it seem so.
They do. My parents are big RVers, but my husband and I always talk about it. The fact that they need to know where dump stations are always deters us. We're like, there's a whole part of their world revolved around which
Pump
campground has
station.
that.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, maybe we'll just drive and stay at a hotel. But we do like the freedom because he's always like, maybe we should get one of those Volkswagen vans. I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, they look really nice online.
They do. They're gorgeous. And we both love to travel. I mean, we really like that. So,
Where do you live? Do you live in Minnesota still?
no, even though I sound like I do, I live in Nashville. So, which is
Oh,
funny
okay.
because people will be like, when I do a lot of public speaking, they'll be like, so you really don't sound like you're from Nashville. I'm like, what do you mean? Oofda. Not going to my Minnesota stuff. So, but my
Yeah.
kids are hybrids. They speak Minnesotan and like Nashville together. So they say, don't you know, y'all? So they both cultures.
Yeah, they've adopted both.
They've adopted both, yes.
Where can listeners find you?
So the most common place people find me is on Facebook at Finding Joy blog. So if you type in that, they'll just find my face will pop up. And otherwise you can find me on Instagram, finding_joy, or on my website, findingjoy.net.
All right, awesome. All of Rachel's information is going to be in the show notes of today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It was super fun to talk with you.